I welcome you warmly to our channel.
Today we're going to crack open this really powerful allegorical poem, The Ballad of the Sorcerers. And honestly, you should think of it less as a story and more like a playbook. It's a blueprint for how illusion is built, sold, and then used to gain absolute control. So our journey kicks off with a feeling that I think we can all recognize, right? It's that search for meaning. The poem introduces us to this hopeful pilgrim, someone trekking through wind and dust, just looking for something more. And this deep human need for answers, for some kind of peace, well, that's the fertile ground where the seeds of deception are about to be planted. And right away, we see the first, really subtle twist. The pilgrim gets just ordinary, muddy water, but it's presented as this miraculous thing with just a whisper. This reveals the core secret of the whole con. It doesn't need to be fancy. It just has to prey on our deep-seated desire to believe. And just like that, a simple fable becomes a sacred truth. Look, this simple trick with the muddy water, that's just the opening act. It really makes you wonder, if this is what's happening at the foot of the mountain, what kind of grand deceptions are being constructed at the very top? Well, the poem is about to take us right there. And this brings us to the architects of this whole illusion, the sorcerers. Now, these guys aren't casting spells with wands. No, they're masters of psychological warfare. So let's break down their methods, their playbook of control. Their number one tool is pure spectacle. See, they know that if you can overwhelm the senses with something completely awe-inspiring, you can actually short-circuit a person's critical thinking. It's all about creating an experience that is so grand, so breathtaking, that it feels more real than reality itself. And the poem gives us this incredible image to make the point. Golden statues that seem to breathe light. I mean, wow. These fabricated wonders are designed to produce a feeling of divinity, to draw people in like moths to a flame, a beautiful but totally artificial light. But the trickery isn't always on this grand scale. In fact, their real genius is in taking something utterly mundane, a little glint of light from a lantern, and turning it into a divine sign. They manufacture the miracle, they point it out, and then the crowd's own excitement just does the rest of the work, amplifying the lie until it feels like the absolute truth. And you know, when awe isn't enough, they pivot to a much darker tool, fear. By creating this atmosphere of a constant, vague threat, they position themselves as the only ones with the answers, the only ones who could protect you from dangers that, well, dangers they invented themselves. And this is exactly how they do it. They take perfectly normal things, curling shadows, rising smoke, and they invest them with this terrifying meaning. They become the exclusive interpreters of a dangerous world, which makes everyone else totally dependent on them for safety. It's basically a protection racket for the human soul. Okay, so we've seen the sorcerer's toolbox, right? Spectacle and fear. But how does it all work so effectively? How does a blatant lie manage to capture the hearts and minds of so many people? The poem gets into the psychological mechanics of it all, and it is just chilling. At its heart, it's a classic bait and switch. I mean, look at the promise. Sacred truths, blessings, power. That's everything that poor pilgrim was searching for. But the reality is the polar opposite. Fables, madness, servitude. And the trap is, by the time you realize the switch has been pulled, you're already caught. This right here might be the poem's most profound insight. The sorcerer's power, it doesn't come from some magical source. Their painted palaces are built on pillars of your innocence. Think about that for a second. The believers aren't just passive victims. They become unwitting accomplices. Their trust is the very material used to build the prison walls. And this is how the system becomes a kind of perpetual motion machine. The people who are deceived don't just quietly believe the lie, they become its most passionate ambassadors. They become heralds, spreading the illusion to everyone they know, not out of malice, but from a genuine belief that they're sharing something sacred. So let's zoom out for a minute. What happens when this system of control escapes the mountaintop and infects an entire society? The poem then paints this truly devastating portrait of a nation that's built on nothing but lies. The poem lays out the path to ruin in 3 crystal clear steps. First, the people's search for meaning is hijacked and twisted into servitude. Second, that power gets corrupted and monetized. Truth is literally sold to the highest bidder. And the final tragic outcome? The nation's very soul, its living heart, is just carved out and destroyed. This is the terrifying endgame. The illusion grows so massive that it consumes every other form of authority. The lines between faith and power, between church and state, are completely erased. When the rulers themselves are kneeling, you know the sorcerers have already won. And this is the devastating cost, paid entirely by the people. They lose everything, not just the tangible stuff, like their land, but the intangible, their faith, their hope. And the final bitter irony, while the nation collapses around them, the sorcerers celebrate, toasting their success by the light of the very same lanterns they used to start the whole fire. But just as the story reaches its absolute bleakest point, the entire poem pivots. It transforms from this dark diagnosis of a society's sickness into an electrifying call to arms. The final verses start by looking back, by acknowledging a past that was defined by passive acceptance, a time of being asleep at the wheel, of being silent, still, and just afraid. This really sets the stage for a radical, explosive break from that past. And then, the poem offers 3 words that just cut through the entire illusion like a knife. But rise we must. That's not a suggestion, it's an imperative. It's a declaration that being passive is no longer an option, because survival itself is on the line. And here is the final instruction. The solution is really a 2-step process. First, you have to see the illusion for what it really is. You have to unmask the ghosts and realize these all-powerful figures are just smoke and mirrors. And second, seeing isn't enough. You have to act. You have to chase them from their thrones of cloud and reclaim the power they stole. Which, of course, leaves us here. This poem is a powerful allegory, a story about pilgrims and sorcerers that reveals a timeless human truth. It really forces us to look around and ask ourselves, what are our modern-day golden statues? What muddy water are we being told is holy? And what powerful myths do we hold to our chest, helping to build these painted palaces with our very own trust?
Thank you very much for watching.